Hey, hey, hey! Welcome to Elementary. And today, I am so delighted to have my guest join me today. So as you know, we're just about ready to get started. Hello.
Hi, Janet. How are you?
Good. So for all of you watching, my name is Jacqueline Watson, and today I have Stonegate Legal. So without, let's get started. Introduce yourself and your Instagram handle.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bita DeLisi with Stonegate Legal Services. And here we are. I'm really excited to be here today.
Perfect. And your Instagram handle is at Stonegate Legal Services, right?
It is.
Yeah, no dots and on right.
No
It's just
dots,
at
no
Stonegate.
dashes.
Yes, that's good. So tell us a little bit about your business and and where you're located.
We are a boutique firm. We only handle landlord and tenant matters. Our team of paralegals is myself and consists of a great power team ready to assist landlords throughout the province of Ontario. All we handle is landlord and tenant matters just because of our background in real estate. So what we essentially do is we provide support to realtors and their clients throughout the province of Ontario when it comes to dealing with landlord and tenancy matters.
So thank you for that. Before we get started, I just want to let people know. I know, there's someone says Nita is friendly and knowledgeable. Thank you so much for that comment. But if anybody has any questions that you specifically want to ask, please, there's a little question icon. You can type it in there. You can write it in the comments. I'm going to try and keep up with it. If we can't get to it on this live session, we will get back to you either way with those responses. So ask your questions. So tell us, how long have you been in business?
So my background actually lies in real estate. So I obtained my real estate license. I'm going to age myself now. Back in 2004, 2005, when I obtained my real estate license. And I started acquiring landlord and investor clients who were basically out of province and out of the country. And the ones that were actually in the province and in the country didn't really want to tend to the day-to-day activities when it comes to managing their investment. So just like all my real estate colleagues out there, in order to keep that relationship with the seller, with the client, I, alongside my husband, we started a property management company to kind of act as an umbrella in managing these properties. And then 9 times out of 10, I would go to the landlord and tenant board to, on behalf of my landlord clients on matters like non-payment of rent, late payment of rent, maintenance and repairs, so forth and so on. And 9 times out of 10, my matters would get dismissed because I was not a licensed paralegal or a lawyer. So I went back to school. I obtained my paralegal license, and again, to act as an umbrella to help my clients and my investor landlords. And I was being approached by my real estate colleagues and broker of records and managers asking me to train their agents and bring awareness to their agents when it comes to dealing with landlord and tenant matters. Because I know, being an agent, I know your lingo, and I know that we're kind of like fish out of water when it comes to dealing with landlord and tenant matters. We're left to figure it out. And often when we're trying to figure things out and we're trying to act in good faith for our clients, we often not intentionally, we often tend to give the wrong advice. So, and that's why we're here. We're here to help provide support to agents so that they don't get themselves or their clients into trouble. So our real estate background goes back to 2004, 2005. Our firm, Stonegate Legal Services, opened its door to the public in 2018. So we are able to service all of Ontario now.
Excellent. That's excellent. So, what advice would you give? We have a question already, but I'll get to that a little later. But what advice
Awesome.
would you give a landlord and with a tenant that refuses to pay rent?
Well, my advice to landlords when you have a tenant that refuses or doesn't pay rent is don't wait to serve notice for non-payment of rent. Don't wait. Even if that tenant comes to you and says, hey Jay, I lost my job, or something went down and I don't have access to the funds, don't wait, because right now it's taking in and around 7 to 8 months to receive a notice of hearing. So the longer you actually wait to serve notice to start the process, the longer it's going to take for you to file, and the longer it's going to take to get a hearing date. So don't wait. If the tenant is not paying, notice should be served the day after rent is due.
Perfect. So someone is asking, where is your office located?
Our office is located in the heart of North York. It's at Victoria Park, just south of Fitch.
So let's talk about when a landlord can gives notice to it. When can a landlord give notice to a tenant, and under what circumstances?
So a landlord can really give notice in different circumstances. For example, if the tenant stops paying the rent, the landlord would serve an N4 notice for non-payment of rent. If the tenant is not allowing for showings, if the tenant is making noise, or if the tenant is smoking and it's interfering with the landlord's rights, then the landlord would serve the N5. More common notices are the N4, the N5, the N8 for persistent late payment. The N12 is a very heavily weighted notice as well, and that's to end the tenancy for the landlord's or new purchaser's own use. So if you sell a property and the new purchaser requires possession, it's the N12.
Yeah, that's that's why, I'm so glad you decided to join today on the show, because you're a wealth of information. So thank you. So what landlords so let's say a landlord claims he needs the property back for his family, which is quite common. People think they can just say that. But who is considered family?
Who is considered family? That's a good question. I get that asked all the time. Your child or your parent. Okay, so brother, sister, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, unfortunately, are not considered family when it comes to serving legal notice. It's only your child or your parent. That's it.
Yeah, there's so many people out there that just don't know the law when it comes to this stuff, right? And whether it's a landlord or a tenant, I think they're equally responsible when they don't know and they're not informed, right? So thank you again for agreeing to come on and give us some of this information, right? So what rights do a landlord have with regard to a tenant, like with regard to entering a tenant's property, either, for monthly inspections or for even real estate showings?
All right, so let's talk about entry. A landlord does not have to provide notice in two circumstances. Okay, so let's talk about entry without notice. Two circumstances: emergencies, or if the tenant consents to entry at the time of entry. Okay?
Mm-hmm. So you knock on the door, someone says, hey, can I come in? And they said, yeah, come on in.
You
so
got
that's
it.
Consenting to entry. Okay.
Consent. So usually what the super will knock on the door and say, well, can I come in and check your appliance that you're telling me it's not working? And if the tenant says, yes, come on in, then that's consent, right? Now, let's talk about notice, the entry with notice. Okay, so the landlord has to provide 24 hours notice in the case of an inspection, in the case that a mortgagee or an insurer wants to assess the rental property or the complex, in the event of a real estate showing. That's really important as well. For real estate showings, I always say the more notice you provide in advance, the better. Even if it's more than 24 hours notice, the better. The more that tenant is aware of when you're coming in, the more they have time to either prepare to vacate the property, well, prepare to step out of the property, or just make sure the property is in showable condition.
Yeah. So would you then, I know this is, I'm just asking this question ad hoc, but would you then also say that it may be a better idea to say showings every day between this time and this time? Would that be like a bulk showing time to get them to agree to that? Is that a better process as opposed to, hoping that the office calls and they keep getting declined, for the showing?
That's a great question. See, I know that as a realtor, I know that common practice is that the listing brokerage will call the tenant. Or common practice is one of the things you just said is that, we'll do showings on Monday to Friday between, let's say, 2 and 4 or 2 and 6, or Saturdays, Sundays, 12 to 5, whatever the case is. So you don't have to provide notice. But legally, the tenant is entitled to be served 24 hours notice. Legally. So common practice, although I understand the lingo, I know what common practice is, and I know that often you can't go to the property 4 or 5 times to post a notice of entry to the door for tomorrow's showings. Like sometimes it's physically not possible for you as an agent to go there, but the law requires service of 24 hours notice for all showings, and that's legally what you would have to do.
So we have a question here, and Big City Zach.
Hi, Zach.
Looks like Big City Zach. Anyways, why would you make a separate contract for snow removal and lawn maintenance with a tenant and not add it to the lease?
Well, because they're 2 separate agreements. Okay, let's talk about lawn maintenance and snow removal. Even if you include that in the lease agreement and the tenant signs to it, because that clause is inconsistent with the Residential Tenancies Act. So it's inconsistent with the law that governs landlords and tenants. Because the law says, although the law doesn't make direct reference to snow removal and grass cutting, it does say that the landlord is responsible to maintain and repair. That includes grass cutting and snow removal. So I always say is that you have to keep those two separate. If you're hiring the tenant to do it, then you're going to have a separate contractor's agreement, separate from the lease. Right?
And do you have to give consideration? So
absolutely.
Okay.
Imagine like you're hiring. Yes. Think of it this way, Jay. Think of it in the sense that you're hiring a contractor to do it. Right? If you were to contract a snow removal company, what would you need? You would need a contract, there would be consideration, and they would provide you with an invoice of what they did. All those elements must be at play when you're hiring the tenant to do it. So the rent stays the same. The rent will be $2,000 a month or whatever it is, the same. You will receive the same amount of rent every month. You will pay out based on when the tenant invoices you for their work, just like a contractor would. No different.
Let's see. Perfect. That's a good question. That's a good question.
That's a good question. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots to think about, right? There's lots of moving pieces where people don't think it through, I guess, when they're doing these things and when it falls apart. I mean, luckily we have you. We can call you. So Naz is asking, notice needs to be on the door. How about email and text message?
That is a great question as well, Naz. The notice for entry is the only notice, okay? So the only notice that gets posted to the front door of the rental unit. That's it. All other notices have to be served in accordance to the rules of procedure. The only way that a notice can be served via email or text message is if the consent to service via email form is filled out. Okay, usually that's done at the time of the lease. If that form is not filled out giving consent to service via email, and you serve a notice via email, and you wait 7 or 8 months to get to the board, the board can actually dismiss the landlord's application because proper procedure was not followed. Okay, so it's very important that if a matter is going through the landlord and tenant board, that proper procedure be followed. And one of the questions, sorry, Jay, I need to add this because it's very, very important, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
One of the important things that you need to understand and you need to wrap your head around is that, and one of the questions will be asked is that, why are the laws always for the tenant? Okay, I get that question asked all the time at every single interview. And I always have the same answer. The law is there to protect all parties, okay? 5 years ago, when a tenant would stop paying, we would serve the notice and then file with the board, and then in 3 to 4 weeks, we would have a notice of hearing. Okay, that was about 5 years ago. Now, it's serve the notice, file with the board, and then wait. You're waiting 7 to 8 months to get to the board. So it's not that the law is for the tenant, it's that the procedure is broken, or the LTB is broken. Okay, that's what we need to fix the LTB, because it's not the law, it's the procedure, the length of time it takes to get to the board. And by the time you get to the board, 7 to 8 months have passed. If a tenant is not paying rent already, then by the time you get to the board, they owe you a minimum of $16,000.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it doesn't look like anyone is working these days. And I know they're working from home, but it really doesn't look like anyone is like truly working. But anyways, that's a rant for another day. But so what's the best way to get a tenant to leave? Especially if, in our cases, when we're looking to sell a house, right? Like someone's looking to sell a house, what's the best way? Yeah.
Right? My husband says, money talks. The more money, the louder it talks. Cash for keys is the most effective way to get the tenant out prior to having the property listed on the market. So even before you list it, cash for keys always more enticing to get the tenant out. And the reason why is because the landlord can really do whatever they want if a proper settlement agreement and the N11 is signed by the tenant. They can sell the property, they can stage it, they can paint it, they can do the repairs, and then list it. You're not going to have any problems with the showing restrictions. You're not going to have any problems with closing. There's not going to be, can I guarantee vacant possession? Can I not guarantee vacant possession? Because the tenant is gone.
Yeah, and who wants someone else's, tenant? Like everyone's skeptical about that piece, right? As well.
Yeah.
Which is really, really hard because. I had a nightmare of a situation just with with my buyer, and people that didn't want to leave, and we had gone through, but it was Christmas, and the courts are closed over Christmas. It was just it can be quite consuming, let's just say.
Oh yeah.
Right. So how would you how would you say is the best way for a landlord to check on a person before signing a lease or handing over the keys? Like what's the best way to check? And do you do that piece or no? Just landlord-tenant board?
No,
right?
We don't provide that as a service. We get asked about it all the time, but that's not a service that we provide. We refer that out to our agents. So agents, this is your expertise. But I always say that you can save 90% or 95% of headaches by vetting the tenants. Okay, vet them, get them through the ringer, just like how you would a buyer. So if a buyer were to call you and say, hey, can you show me 10 properties? You're not going to get into a car and show them 10 properties. You want to know, are you approved for a mortgage? Are you working with an agent? Do you have a pre-approval? You're asking qualifying questions, right? Same as a tenant. You want to make sure, do you have a credit? What's your credit, right? What's your form of income? Right? Who's going to be occupying the property? Are you a smoker or non-smoker? You want to make sure that you're basically going through a process of disqualification, like a buyer, no different, right? Check them out on social media. Instagram and Facebook. I mean, if they're telling you they don't have a pet over the phone, and then you go on their Instagram, they have 1,000 pictures of their dog, guess who got lied to, right?
Yeah.
So, make sure you check them out on social media. Social media is their life on the internet, right?
I don't have a dog, by the way. I just have pictures of all the people's dogs, in case you're wondering. But no, I'm just kidding. But yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Another tool is canly.org.
Yeah.
Canly.org is basically gives you access to online court orders, and landlord and tenant board orders are now becoming public. So if you're trying to check out a prospective tenant and you input their name to Canly and they pop up, well, it's interesting for you to read that order and see, well, did this person get evicted? Did the person take the landlord to the board? What's going on? So canly.org is great as well. Check their references from their previous landlord, not their current one. Because if they stop paying the rent and the landlord is forgiving $20,000, they will tell you everything under the stars to get them out, right? But their former landlord is the one that, they don't care. They have no ties to the tenant. They're the ones that are going to tell you the truth, right? And I'll tell you, for my own tenants, for my own rental properties, I put them through the ringer. I want to know who you are, because this is what I do for a living. I don't want any headaches. I want to know who you are and who's going to be occupying my property. And now more than ever, I want to know that you can pay the rent, because we rely, as landlords, on that rental income in order to offset our expenses.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right? So what if a lease is signed, but the keys are not handed over yet, and then you kind of, pick up on, some, probably something that comes up that maybe you would have disqualified that person anyways, or, they've got a lot of red flags that suddenly come up last minute. How would you handle that piece?
Well, it depends. Whose side am I on? Am I on the tenant side? I'm usually on the landlord side. And I always tell my landlords, prior to you even signing a lease, vet them, or sign a conditional lease, Form 400. Have a condition in there that allows a landlord to, basically do their due diligence before the new Ontario Standard lease is signed. Because once that lease is signed, if keys are not released for whatever reason, that party is now in breach of contract. So on the landlord side, if you don't release the keys, the tenant can apply to the board and have the board enforce that the landlord let the tenant in. Gets a little gray there.
Yes, absolutely. That becomes, I asked the question because, it takes it into a whole different area of law too, right? Because then the onus is even more on you to provide, that proof. That's, I could keep you on forever.
I'd love to be on forever.
The only thing is, I noticed that when we do these lives, people have an attention span of like 20 minutes, 30, and we're on to almost 30 minutes right now, and I'm glad everyone stuck around.
Wow. Yes. It's an interesting topic. People can... It
is. Yeah. I can listen to you every day. Yeah. It would never grow old for me. I'd be like, oh my God, I just learned something new. It just reminded me again. But, I want to be able to get you to share, as much as you can about your business. So I'm not sure if there's something else you'd like to add in our wrap up, and I'd love for you to.
Well, like I mentioned, we're here to provide support to realtors, brokerages throughout the province. So if you're a realtor and we can help you or help your client or your landlord client, we're here to support you. If you are a broker manager and you want us to put together a seminar for your brokerage, we do them for other brokerages all throughout the province, absolutely free of charge. send us a DM and we'd be more than happy to set something up. If you contact my office, I don't answer the phones, and the reason why is because I'm either training agents, I'm in hearings, or I'm negotiating termination of tenancies. One of my powerhouse paralegals are more than happy to assist you. But the best way to get a hold of me is via email, and that's info@stonegatelegalservices.ca. And I can respond to your email at any time.
Perfect. And, follow her on Instagram. She does some live videos, which has tons of information, which I'm sure everyone is going to, at some point, have a client that needs some help, or, have a tenant that they need to evict and you need to call Vida. So, so thank you again. Thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for all of you watching, thank you for spending your evening with us. We appreciate it. For all of you, my name is Jacqueline Watson. I'm a realtor with Sutton Group, and I'll have the replay saved so you can watch it again. We also have a podcast, so it's called Elementary, and it's available on Google and everywhere podcasts are played: Spotify, Google, Apple, and if you want to be interviewed, DM me, and I'll be happy to have you back again in the new year if you'd like. It'll be so great.
I'm down anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Bye, everyone.
Bye.